Hi guys, thanks for tuning in to another episode of Nuggets News or our monthly mining update. And we're back again with Will and Cal this time from Mining Store. We're going to be talking about everything that's happening in the mining world, particularly the coronavirus and how that might affect the supply chain side of things, as well as a few of the new coins and just everything that is happening in that world. So thanks for joining us and welcome to the show, Cal.
Thank you. Thanks for having me, Nugget.
Where should we start? We'll get into the first slide here, and you guys have got a bit of an overview, and we got some good questions last month. But anything in particular you guys want to start off on?
Look, not really. I mean, it's obviously sorry for missing last month, but we were pretty flat out. Had a couple of things come up, but pleasure to be back on the show. And yeah, let's jump straight into the questions, I guess.
That's right. I think everyone has January off in the crypto space, so don't worry
Got to
too
take
much.
some fun
Oh,
off.
it's hard when you don't sleep at night. You got to take at least 1 month off.
And it's been pretty hectic lately, so I'm glad people did have some time off. But straight into these questions that we got from everyone at home. So thanks for sending your questions in, guys. Do you want to work your way through and answer these questions for us, guys?
Yeah, absolutely. So, I mean, first one there, what happens when the BTC mining reward goes to zero? It's obviously a question that we get a lot. Basically, if you look back at the notes on the Bitcoin halvening notes that I put up last PowerPoint, you'll see that at the moment there's about 18 million coins that have been mined, 3 million are still in what we call a reserve. And basically, as time goes on, each block is releasing some of that. So eventually that will get to zero. And the idea is by the time that it does get to zero, the network, I suppose, transaction fees that also go to miners will be sufficient to pay for the miners doing their work. So by no means, once it gets to zero, there's going to be no reward for miners and everything's going to shut down. We will be in more of a self-sufficient market. So that basically answers that question there.
Yeah, I like to tell people, it's really 100 years away, so it's not something you should spend too much time stressing about either. But
a very long time away, yes.
A question about your mining store, the community that you guys run from Tristan?
Yeah, absolutely. So our mining store community, we basically built it it's a purely education-based system. So everyone's basically able to help each other out with their questions. What coins are most profitable to mine? Should I be buying? Should I be selling them? Is anyone mining this coin, that coin? All of our support is run in there as well. So for some of our clients that obviously have larger hosted facilities going, anything to do with if they want a coin change for them, we can basically get the message from them in there. But mostly just an educational community running there, guys.
Awesome. More info on your website, I think, there. And mining and tax. So we get so many questions about tax, and we do more information on this when it comes to tax time of year. But anything you guys wanted to mention in terms of mining and tax?
Yeah, look, I mean, it's one of those ones we leave the tax questions to the tax man, the guy who's the expert at it. Try not to give too much advice on it. So similar to yourself, Alex, we partner with Crypto Tax Australia. Adrian's the man to hit up for all of this. I think next month we'll dive into a little bit more. We should actually probably get him on the show and get him to answer some of these questions.
Yeah.
So we'll skip over that one for now and we'll dive into it a lot more next month with Adrian.
No worries. Data and bandwidth requirements. I think we did touch on this last week, but that's not something that you really need. It's more the hardware side of things is far more important than bandwidth, isn't it?
Absolutely, mate. And Cal will vouch for me here. I mean, in early days, we had some clients mining off 3G internet. At the end of the day, guys, what's happening is your miner, the actual hardware itself is what's doing the hard work offline, technically. It's trying to solve an algorithm. Once it gets the answer to that, all it needs to do is submit that answer. So it's not a high bandwidth kind of process going on here. Basically, it's more the hardware solving the problem and then just submitting a ticket. Not a high bandwidth kind of relationship going on there.
Yeah, this is probably one where I would like to dive into it a bit more, because this is where we get into that big block versus little block debate. And when we start talking about, Craig Wright's talking about terabyte blocks. He wants massive blocks, a huge blockchain, and only very few people running these nodes. Now, if I've got to propagate a terabyte to Will and Cow every 10 minutes, then obviously you start to need some really, really good internet. So this is where if we keep that Bitcoin block at around 1 megabyte, it changes a little bit with Segwit, but we can propagate that off very basic smartphones and 3G internet throughout Africa, for example, and keep Bitcoin decentralized. Anything you guys want to add to that?
I think you make just a really good point on it there, and talking about Africa and other countries that might not have the best bandwidth in the world. In the nature of decentralization, everyone should be able to kind of participate in this network. So yeah, it's just really important to kind of take care of those people, and not just have it as really high technology that can participate.
Absolutely. Even Australia, classed as a third world country in terms of internet, we can still mine off our phones, which is pretty impressive.
It's funny. Whenever I mention that, some people say, no, the internet's good in Melbourne City, and some people say, no, it's hopeless. So it just depends where you are, I think, these days. Yeah.
No, not in Australia.
Yeah. Mining pools and how do they work? Again, this is something when people say, I think Brad Garlinghouse was on CNBC yesterday. Again, he's saying, Bitcoin is controlled 60% in China. And they pull this figure about where the mining pools are based. And that's very different to where the hardware and the hash power is based.
Yeah, absolutely. We're going to dive into the mining pool side of things a little bit more when we talk about how you actually gauge the profitability of coins. So I'm going to use a neat little example. It's to do with like a raffle ticket situation. So we'll wait for that slide, but essentially just basically what a mining pool is rather than you trying to, have a really small chance of hitting a block or solving the problem and getting paid for it, you team up with a bunch of guys in a mining pool, and say you're contributing 10% of the hash to that mining pool, then when you do hit a block together, you'll get 10% of the reward. So doing things together, increasing your chance of getting a hit, is basically what's going on with the
removing the luck aspect to a massive degree.
I think in Australia, everyone's familiar with the Taps Lotto or the gambling syndicate, that side of things.
Exactly right.
Bitstream. So again, this is one that I didn't know too much about. So you guys were talking about different mining algorithms, and then the software is not always available. So talk us through a Bitstream or a private stream for mining a coin.
Absolutely. So, with a bitstream, essentially, it's something that's quite specific to FPGA mining. So what will happen is a coin, they will release their project and they'll allow miners to mine on it. They'll usually provide software to mine that coin for CPU and GPU, if they support CPU and GPU. And then basically what FPGA miners can do is these FPGA miners are specifically built to mine cryptocurrency, but you have to develop your own software to mine coins. That software is called a bitstream. And basically, I suppose that's our role at Mining Stories, to develop these bit streams to allow our miners to actually mine those coins and mine those coins with higher grade hardware than GPU or CPUs. So in a nutshell, that's basically what a bitstream is. And who owns them? Anyone can build them. If we build one, then we obviously own that private bitstream, but that doesn't mean someone else can't build one.
Yeah. More often than not, there's 3 or 4 parties that are working on the same stream, and they normally use it for 3 or 6 months without even knowing that each other is using it.
This is an area of computer science that I've only learned about the past couple of years. I find it so interesting when we go all the way down from the hardware, and you can build the best computer you want or the best graphics card, and then you've got to wait for the guys to build the software to process all the ones and zeros, and it's the same in the crypto world, which is fascinating.
It is it's very competitive space. There's very few people that can develop private bit streams, but so that's the aim of the game. I suppose that's the competitive advantage that some people have.
Yeah. I think we had one more here. The difference between a mining rig and a node, or maybe you want to even incorporate what's the difference between a full node and a mining node.
For sure, yeah. So, essentially when we talk about nodes, I like to think of them as a participant in a network, okay? So it's someone contributing something to a network, whether it's run on what we call a virtual private server. So that's more, familiar with proof of stake coins. It's very low grade hardware, but just kind of doing a messaging kind of task, as opposed to a mining rig is like a very powerful node. It's solving a very intense, what we would call like a puzzle almost, or and submitting that to the network. So they're basically doing the same thing. They're just performing different tasks.
So I can run a full node and I can keep a full copy of the blockchain at home, but that's very different to a miner that's actually trying to solve the next problem to add blocks to that chain as well.
Correct. Like when we talk about nodes on wallets, if you run a full node, that means you've got the whole blockchain on that node there, as opposed to maybe like a remote node where you're just relying on someone else's copy of the blockchain. But when we talk about them in mining, it's basically a participant in the network is the easiest way that I can put it.
Yeah, and maybe just to give people a real world example, recently we saw IOTA have some issues, and they're experimenting with different things. So they've got that Tangle technology that's not a blockchain, but they've got a coordinated node. So he's the master that's overseeing everything. So when something goes wrong, that's why they're able to freeze the network, which you can't do in Bitcoin. So.
Yeah, they follow that kind of like pay it forward, I guess, mentality or mechanism.
Centralized.
So, yeah, exactly. Bit of a worry to see that like a whole blockchain kind of cut off, or not necessarily blockchain but network. So
yeah, I actually quite like IOTA. I think they're doing interesting stuff, and we're still ironing out bugs every day, as we saw in the DeFi world this week as well.
Absolutely, yeah. Internet of Things is an amazing thing, and it needs to be worked on. But obviously, us blockchain guys that love decentralization and don't like centralization, things like that can be a bit of a worry. But all the best to them. I do like the project as well.
Okay, so next slide here, we've got how it all began. And we did touch on this a bit last week, but I thought some of the numbers were interesting in the coming slides about how much you could mine back in the day.
Yeah, so I'll kind of break down how Bitcoin, it's just mainly focused on Bitcoin mining, kind of just the path that it's taken since it started in 2009, I guess. So when it first started in 2009, there was no purpose-built hardware, there was no GPU mining or anything. It was released purely for CPUs, and pretty weak CPUs at that. They were using Build Basics Celeron CPUs that were found in standard mass-produced office computers. And I actually was looking up before, the first block, or block 0 as it was known, had a message in it. And it was a title of an article found in the Times on the day of the first block, which I actually learnt that before.
That's pretty cool.
Chancellor on the brink of second bailout, I think it was.
Yeah, exactly that. Yeah, and I was actually just looking at the Block Explorer and looking at the first few blocks. So you learn something every day.
So I remember very clearly, even in probably 2012 or 13, there were still people mining on just normal computers, and probably weren't making a lot back then. But when Bitcoin went up in the future, you did pretty well.
Yeah, well, the first block was mined by a single person, and they received 50 BTC just on probably a CPU that was worth $50.
Yeah,
madness.
I mean, right now that's nearly 500 grand right now if they somehow still have it.
Do you want me to flick through the next few slides now? We've given that overview there.
Yeah, we can go to GPUs now.
Yeah.
So yeah, in 2010, there was a lot of people that kind of were on the internet looking up Bitcoin, that were kind of switching their CPUs on to mine Bitcoin, and difficulty was becoming a real prevalent factor when mining. And then in 2010, someone publicly released, I'm not sure exactly what website he released it on, but he released the software that could allow graphics cards to mine Bitcoin, and they were 50 times more powerful than a CPU. So as you were we're still mining on CPUs in 2012, but they would have been earning absolutely peanuts because people were using their GPUs. And this was the time where we saw the first mining rig appear online. It was a real wooden frame with 6 graphics cards put on it. I remember seeing that in probably 2014, probably a few years after it actually took place. That's kind of the first ever mining rig that I ever saw.
And just an example, as you say, of people releasing that software that someone had to build or code originally, and then releasing it for everyone to use as well. And then we got to the world of FPGAs, which I know you guys specialize in now.
Yeah, so FPGAs, I mean, it did start in 2011, but for the purpose of Bitcoin. So I'm not sure if you could see the photo there. It wasn't the standard FPGAs, like the ones, the red one in the photo. They were kind of in little microscopic, little USB-looking things almost, because I'm sure a lot of people have seen the little mining USBs that people still try and sell on eBay. And they kind of produced the same hash power as a GPU, but far less power. I mean, they could be run off a USB power plug rather than a 6-pin power plug that a GPU was drawing. So they used 70% less power than GPUs, and they got maybe 5% less hash than a GPU. So it was kind of, I saw a photo as well, first ever, not a huge warehouse, but a mini warehouse. So a guy set up the first kind of mining farm or mining operation that I've personally ever seen on the internet. And he would have been pulling it up.
Oh, it would have been crazy. Crazy.
Yeah, that's and so interesting to me. And these, well, we'll get to ASICs in a sec, but FPGAs have taken on, I guess, a more targeted focus these days in terms of what they can mine and not trying to compete with the ASIC miners.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, I mean, I might jump in. It's pretty much, like a main thing that people strive for when they're mining is, not being locked to one thing like ASICs. I mean, ASICs are great if you want to mine Bitcoin, and all power to you if that's what you want to do. But at the end of the day, you want to make sure that if something happens to Bitcoin, that the hardware you got still can mine something else. And that's why we kind of focus on the FPGA side of things. Is we have had ASICs mining in the past, but at the end of the day, it's nice to know that if something does happen to that one coin that an ASIC can mine, you can always reprogram and mine something else. So, yeah.
Cool.
Yeah, removes that one. Yeah, that's the one risk that I always had in the back of my mind when mining with an ASIC. Just, I'm sure Bitcoin's not going to fork away without any. Like, it'll probably have. It needs a lot of notice to happen, but that was always just a fear in the back of my mind. So it makes me sleep a little bit better.
Sure. That's not going to keep the Maximus very happy, Cal. But what do you guys think about the Bitcoin forks at the moment? And like Bitcoin Cash is proposing another, what are they calling it? Like an incentive miners tax. Do you think there's going to be other forks, or you haven't given that much thought?
Oh, look, to a degree, like we look at these things, I will note something really interesting on the point of forked coins is just recently when we saw Bitcoin Cash have that massive rally, it actually put the network hash rate of Bitcoin down because although coins can't switch to different, ASIC can't switch to different algorithms, they can switch to algorithms on the SHA-256. So, yeah, I mean, I actually as a miner, personally, I like the forks because it reduces, I suppose, the network hash rate on the one coin, and it actually kind of spreads out the profit. So I personally would only ever mine Bitcoin. That's the only coin in the SHA-256 that I appreciate. And so, yeah, if there's other forks and people want to take their mining power over there, I'll mine all that Bitcoin I can get.
Yeah, so as you say, when everything sort of had a wild reach in equilibrium, but then Bitcoin Cash goes from $150 to $500, people say, well, I can point my mining power there and get triple the money. And that's where we see everything's probably going through that correction or re-establishing an equilibrium at the moment.
That's it. Healthy competition.
Cool. Okay, so next up we've got mining profitability. This is what you mentioned before. We've got a good looking jar of jelly beans there, guys.
Absolutely, yeah. So a really big thing that I suppose a couple of newbies always ask is, when they get into the mining, they want to understand a little bit more about how the profitability actually works so they can decide if they want to mine Digibyte or they want to mine CKB. If you get more advanced into it, which I will after I give the basic explanation, there's some really cool strategies that you can do if you understand network hash rate difficulty. But let's go in and just basically get a basic rundown. So the first point there is you've got network hash rate. And I like to think about this as the raffle ticket in a competition for a jar of lollies. And basically what happens is, say you're buying tickets to a raffle and at first you're the first person they come up to and you're the only one with a ticket, then you've got a very high chance that you're going to win that jar of lollies, right? As they go around and they collect money from more people, your kind of profitability or chance of winning goes down. And that relates to basically trying to win the block or enter the right solution for the algorithm, okay? So yeah, similar kind of concept there. The less people that are mining or entering in raffle tickets, the more chance that you are of actually winning that jar of lollies or winning that block, okay? The next thing to understand is the block reward that is actually being given. So you can refer back to the jar of lollies. Obviously, if there's 10,000 lollies in there, then that's quite a large reward. Similar, if a block is giving out 10,000 coins per block, and that's quite a lot. And so, yeah, it depends on also the frequency that those blocks are coming. So if, for example, you're a part of a footy club and they do these raffle tickets raffle draws once every month, that's similar to, the block reward coming out every 10 minutes for Bitcoin or every 30 minutes for a different coin's change, okay? The last point to understand here is the actual coin price, and referring back to the lollies, this is trying to understand, imagine that it's a jar of jelly beans compared to a huge jar of killer pythons. One has more value than the other. You probably would rather a huge jar of killer pythons. So the killer pythons might be Bitcoin, which is quite a valuable coin, and the jelly beans might be some new coin that's been released that no one really knows about, and they're worth 1.001 of a cent. Okay, so all of those things combined together, how many people are mining the coin, how often the rewards are coming out, and the value of those rewards, that kind of gives you the profitability of mining. So might have to go over that explanation again, but it's the best way that I pretty much put it to a real life example.
I just hope that a killer python's only an Australian lolly for our international audience. I'm not sure.
I'm actually not sure. That's a good point.
Anyway, they're a big lolly. Python. They're worth more than a jelly bean.
Yeah, great point. It's a big snake.
A lot of sugar.
Cool.
A lot of sugar. Yeah, that's it.
Okay, good description there. This is just the chart of what you mentioned before, how hash rate was climbing aggressively, and then it sort of has tapered off a little bit. But again, in February, it's still rising. We've seen new all-time highs a couple of times recently.
That's it. And I think from looking at this next chart, I put a black line on the February network hash rate chart, and that's kind of where we were up to previously. So as you can see, the hash rate has gone up quite a bit since then, and that's purely just positive correlation with the price of Bitcoin. As the price of Bitcoin goes up, every block that you're getting more reward. And so, more people are willing to put their miners on or buy new miners. So yeah, I mean, I think leading into the Bitcoin halving, it could become pretty interesting.
I think we're going to see it pretty stagnant just because of this shortage of hardware supply. I'd be really surprised if we see much of an increase from what we can see now.
It's a hard one to tell.
Yeah,
I'm actually feeling the same, that we don't know. There could be a lot of people with miners not actually turned on, and they could be turned on when the profitability comes up. But then when the Bitcoin halving comes and the reward halves, people could jump off. So I'm not going to try to predict this one, guys. To be honest, I'm just sitting back, being risk adverse and waiting till I have the halving to see what happens here. But always good to check out that hash rate. And I suppose it's good to see that people are still willing to, increase their mining farms as Bitcoin price goes up. It shows interest in this network, and I suppose vouchers for this technology.
Yeah, I'm just trying to think of the game theory. If Bitcoin goes into a bull market, well, the hardware is the thing that's not available. Maybe older rigs, less efficient rigs come back online. Maybe people start paying a huge premium for the ASICs that are available. There's lots of things that can happen.
Oh,
that's
absolutely.
what we saw end of 2017. The premiums on virtually every single sort of miner, FPGA, GPU, ASICs were insane. It was like 300% some people were willing to pay.
That's when,
because,
in NVIDIA share price, anyone that made GPUs, their shares just went through the roof. And
Crazy. Yeah, it was interesting times. I can't wait to. I mean, it could be very exciting, but obviously stay safe out there and don't jump in and make rash decisions. But for people with already have got the hardware, I mean, as we'll jump in later when we talk about China and what's going on over there, as Cal said, there is the chance that if people can't buy more hardware and you've already got it, profitability could well increase.
Yeah. The daily cross on the chart, we've just had that today at time of recording, and I was just saying to my group this morning that everyone gets really excited about the golden cross and whatnot, but it's not necessarily the thing that just magically makes prices go up.
Absolutely. I think I read your post today, and I thought it was a really, really good thing to highlight that, it still is a young market. What we probably might see is quite a bit of a dip as it touches, if we can base it on what's happened previously. But I mean, generally, obviously, in a trading sense, crosses indicate we are leading into bullish territory. So I do think that this is a bullish scenario, but by no means, I think as soon as it crosses, as it did today, are we going to go shooting off? But I think it's a good sign leading into the Bitcoin halving, and just leading into this what feels like a bull market. Things are lining up.
Yeah, I mean, I've been quite just the stats and the number of people coming to the space is really we haven't seen anything like this since 2017, to be honest. So for me, any dips are for buying. But after hearing all the mining stuff, the coronavirus and the supply shock, I'm just wondering if there can be a little bit of a fear in the market and some unknowns. We might hear there's rumors and stories coming out of China that all this bad stuff's happening, and that's where we've had these big corrections in the past when people got really scared and China was shutting down ICOs, and then China was shutting down exchanges, then banning crypto. So we know these markets are very emotional. I'm just wondering if we're going to see some scare tactics thrown around about the coronavirus and mining in China.
No doubt. I think we will. I think one thing to note though is, although yes, like a lot of the manufacturing of miners is done in China, and a lot of development on coins is done in China, I do think that this market in general is becoming less Chinese focused, and we are starting to see, even in Australia, I mean, you could probably vouch for it, Nugget, that back 3 years ago, people don't really know what's going on. Now, there's businesses like ourselves that are supplying mining rigs. There's businesses like you that are educating people. I think we're relying less and less on the Chinese market to stimulate it. But you make a very valid point that people will use it as scare tactics.
Yeah, I'd probably say even like the US and Russia looks like they want to get into mining on a pretty big scale. So it's becoming less Chinese relevant.
Exactly right. Yeah, that's kind of what I'm leading to. Yeah.
Cool. Next up, we have touched on the shortage, but anything else you guys want to add there?
Look, I mean, I wouldn't actually. I was speaking to Cal before. I think it would be good if you want to talk to. I mean, you followed it quite well. If you want to give a brief kind of rundown of how you think the virus is going, is it as bad as what people are saying? Is it worse? And then based on the mining side, I think it's just a matter of, there is a shortage of stock right now. We've got people contacting us that want a large amount of rigs. We can only supply so many at a time. But what do you think, Alex? Do you think, it's going to be a classic case of people are really scared now, but it could brush over? Do you think it's going to keep going? What do you reckon?
I think that, at the moment, I think that we get the new number at about midday every day, and it's still going up by 10% a day, the number of deaths. So at the moment, until that exponential growth stops or slows down, it's really hard to say. But when Apple comes out today and says that it's affecting their manufacturing, and then you guys are talking about it affecting mining stuff, we've seen, I think it was the Japanese economy and another Asian economy got their GDP data, and a lot of stuff is falling off a cliff, and I think Australia is going to be really exposed to that. So it can kind of become this thing where it's no worse than the flu medically, but if everyone's getting the flu or everyone's worried about getting the flu and not going out, then I think we could have a couple of nasty
and no vaccine for the flu.
It's a flu with no cure. So it's not necessarily really dangerous and toxic and whatnot, but I think it can really affect our economies.
Yeah, I think that's absolutely spot on point. And I think from our experience, if we can give inside knowledge, I think the more that people share how their experience is, the more people can really understand. Particularly, the media coming out of China is not exactly picture perfect, so to speak. So just from our experience, things like communication with the suppliers is fine. They are working, but they're working from home. We are able to get, troubleshooting fixed, everything like that. People are still working, but from their home environment. It's more just the actual physical production of the miners.
And the exporting as well. There's a lot of hubs in southern China that are just completely shut down.
Hard to export the miners too.
Yeah.
I mean, that's how we feel. I mean, everyone we've talked to seems healthy. There's obviously a lot of deaths and things like that. But communication's going well. It's just the actual production of the miners, and that's probably our intake that we can share at the moment.
Yeah, and with the Bitcoin halving in May, and this thing looks like it's got a 14 to 24 day lag, and we're only 3 months away. I think it's kind of going to be simmering there in the background around the halving, which just makes me think that there's never a dull moment in crypto, but this is just another thing that's going to make it more interesting.
Yeah, absolutely. There's always opportunity with that, though.
Cool. Okay, so a couple of slides left. What mining looks like for the next month? Have you guys got any other interesting coins? I know you mentioned Handshake, and that's one that I posted about the other day. And for those that don't know, Handshake is the first project which is trying to give you the human readable names. So instead of pasting someone's long address, you can send coins to Wheel or Mining Store, and it resolves to their address in the background. So pretty cool technology.
Yeah, so I mean, our developers are working on a bitstream for Handshake, so that's very exciting. It's always good to get a bitstream for a coin that's not only profitable, but a coin that you actually think's got a lot of potential as well. So everyone's pretty excited about this. It's a very foreign thing for people sending, money to some code this long. I think it's a great advancement for the space. Anything that makes things user-friendly, easier to do. So we're glad to be building the bitstream for Handshake. CKB is still doing incredibly well. We had a massive price increase, which was nice for a lot of our miners. A lot of guys were thinking it would be, another month before they'd be able to buy more miners with the coins that they've mined. And we had just a massive influx of people going, whoop, big price increase.
It kind of tacked on to last week's little mini altcoin rally.
Yeah, so CKB has been great. I was mentioning yourself before, offline, Nugget, you were asking, how's the coins going? Is there any new ones? It is pretty much CKB at the moment, which is quite a nice thing. A lot of people don't like chopping and changing every day, chasing different coins. So it's been really nice to have a nice and profitable coin for maybe 4 or 5 months now. Has it been, Kel?
On
CKB.
Yeah, we jumped on in September.
Yeah, we got on early with the private bitstream before people on the testnet, which was good. We do have one other private bitstream which we're building. We can't mention the name of it just yet, but very excited to release that, and hopefully maybe next month we can talk about the coin that we've been working on the back end too.
Awesome. So last slide here. Get those questions coming in for next month. We will get Adrian on at some point, as you said, about the tax stuff. Anything else you guys want to add in conclusion?
Look, from me, that's pretty much it. Just, the questions were great. We had a bit of interaction with your community as well. And everyone's asking some great questions. To be honest, it's impressive to see people, like the caliber of questions that we're getting from 2 years ago to now. People are really actually starting to understand this space. Like, very rarely do I spend, half an hour of the conversation explaining what a blockchain is anymore. People are kind of advancing forward and, really just looking to get involved and capitalize and change the way that they operate in the financial system. So keep the questions coming through mostly, and it's been good educating everyone so far.
Awesome. And Cal?
No, it's pretty much it from me. I suppose, if anyone's got any tax related mining questions, it'd be a great opportunity to leave that in the comments section below. And we can try and work through all of them with Adrian next month.
Yep. Awesome. Well, guys, we'll put the links to all the mining store stuff, and Nuggets News subscribers do get a discount, and members get a bigger discount as well. That's all on the website. So awesome work, guys, and we'll catch up again next month. So cheers.
See you next month,
Alex. Thanks for having us.